So now it's Mark chapter 6, week 15 of year B. We're still with the Gospel of Mark, this magnificent primitive gospel. When we look at this particular section this week, we're very wise to go back to Mark 3. In Mark 3, we're told, Mark tells us that Jesus, out of all the disciples that he had, he chose the 12. That's the name is used for the 12 apostles. The 12, he chose them. He chose who he wanted to. That's what the text says. That's what Mark tells us, that Jesus chose who he wanted. It's his sovereign choice. Jesus is the one who picks the 12. We don't pick it. We don't raffle it. We don't imagine what it might be. We have to accept the sovereign will of Christ. He's the one who chooses from all the men and women disciples. He chooses these 12 men to be the 12 apostles. It's the most important truth that Mark is telling us there. And he says that Jesus chose the 12 for three reasons. One, to be with him. Two, to go out and preach the gospel. And three, to cast out demons. And now, after having spent a significant of time with him, seeing how he preaches the gospel and heals people and casts out demons, he says to them, he calls them back in again and says, right now, out you go 2 by 2 to do exactly what I have been doing. That's the idea. There's been a lot of talk of recent times in the church. When I say recent times in the church, I mean from the latter part of the 1950s right through to now. So that's a very recent part of the church's history, but I guess for some of us it's a longer period, depending on your perspective. There's been a lot of talk about the grace of baptism, that all of us through our baptism are called to go out and be missionary disciples. That's the term that Pope Francis likes to use. Other popes have used different terms, but the basic idea is the same, that because we are baptized into Christ, because we are his body, then all of us are to share in the mission of the mission of Christ. So the 12, yes, in a special way, but then all of us are being sent out to spread the love of Christ. And we've had discussion after discussion, we've had program after program, etc., etc. But it seems to me that the two most critical things that are part of this business of going out and having the confidence, not the arrogance, of spreading the love of Christ, are one, what Mark says in chapter 3, that Jesus chose them to be with him. We have to be with Christ in prayer, and the only way to be with Christ is with the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There's no other way. We've got to pray them, we've got to read them, put ourselves in the scene, imagine ourselves to be with him, because that is the truth. And then we go out not on our own. That'll spell disaster from the get-go. We've got to go out 2 by 2. There's great strength in numbers. When we go 2 by 2, we can talk about our successes, we can talk about our failures, we confront each other's weaknesses, our strengths, recognise them. We just have a magnificent time when we do it 2 by 2. Psalm 1. The very first psalm of the Psalter says, most of life depends on the company we keep. Most assuredly true. So if we want to see renewal in the modern world, particularly in the Western world, there's only one way. That is, we have to be with him. We have to deepen our spiritual life with Christ, with that most mysterious, magnificent, beautiful human being who's also a divine being, fully divine, fully human, and then we do it together. We must go out 2 by 2. There's no other way.